Okay, so good morning, Facebook family. I am here this morning. I'm sweaty, as you can see. I had the opportunity to make it to the gym. I'm happy. I'm happy. I'm happy. I'm happy. And what I'm trying to do real quick is get the volume right. But I made it to the gym this morning. But I was talking to a friend yesterday who and I said that I wanted to talk about love. We got music that talks about love. It's written about, and it's the topic of many stories and love. And I want to take a minute to say good morning, Andrew, and thank you for the other morning. Just give me a minute because it's going to take a minute because love is so big and so important. I want to give you a definition first. Matter of fact, I'm going to give you two definitions. One is the dictionary definition, which does it no justice. And the other is going to be another definition. And when I start to read it, you're going to know exactly where it's from. So the first definition is from, of course, Google Online, Merriam-Webster Dictionary. And it says love is an intense feeling of deep affection, right? A great interest and pleasure in something, right? A deep affection for someone. Like or enjoy very much, which we all know that is such a basic, abstract, watered down definition of what love really is, because there's no way you could adequately describe it in words. Why? Because it's not just a feeling. It's not just action. Love is actually a movement. Right? So I'm going to go into the next definition and then we're going to talk about what I have to say about it. And if you have to say something about it, then we're going to hear what you got to say. Okay, so when I read this, you're going to know where it's from. It says, love never fails, but where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. Where there is knowledge, it will pass away. And now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. And I don't have to tell you where that's from, right? But that touches on what love is just a little bit more. Does that make sense? But I want to put legs on this thing. That right there gave it the body, right? Right? It gave you the upper trunk, which is the head and the upper torso and the trunk of the body. Now we about to put some legs on what love is for the 21st century. Okay, so love. When I was in my 20s, I always reference it to my 20s. Okay, and let's go back further than that. Because lately, last year, I was talking about my 20s, but let's go back further. Let's go back, way back, right? The first semblance of love that I received was from my mother, right? And some of us, depending on what your household was, it was tough love, right? We grew up in a terrain. We grew up in a tough terrain, my brothers and I. My mother grew up in a tough terrain, right? My aunt, as my uncle. So my family, we just grew up in a tough terrain. So our idea of love was given the way that it was given to my mother, the way it was given to my grandmother, the way it was given to her. It was passed down. It was a legacy. Sometimes people need to hear that they are loved based on these definitions right here. And if I can think right now, the way that love was disseminated to me in our household, it was more so demonstrated than it was actually verbalized, if that makes sense. I'm trying to think back, and I don't recall my mom ever saying that she loved me or my dad, but it was demonstrated. How was it demonstrated? A roof was over our head. Food was in our bellies, and these are fundamentals, okay? These are fundamental demonstrations of what love is. Food, shelter, protection, and information, right? And what was the information? The information was about the world and our reality as it was, as we were living it right now in that, at that time, in that moment. So my mom would say, steer clear of this. And my grandmother would give us jewels. Ain't no fool like an old fool. God bless the child as God his own. Those are all demonstrations of love. When you take out your time, and all this stuff that I'm saying is little gems, that composites of little droplets that dropped into my life. But the biggest, hugest feeling of love that I got was with my grandmother. And I want to talk about energy. That energy I got from her, like she was like my mom, like the Matrix Reloaded. It was my mom 2.0. Does that make sense? And what she would do is she would cook, and her food, you tasted the love, right? You know, how she cleaned our clothes, love. You know, how she put us, showered us, bathed us, right? The hand-to-hand contact, love. You know, like that was my grandmother. She knew how to do what she did, right? And we get to this place and we find out that, you know, I'm at years later, in my 20s, I gave love the way that I felt or thought that it should have been dispensed to the people in my life, my girlfriends, right? Because you always get friends. I garnered friends. My relationships in school were the first fundamentals of what it was to demonstrate. I loved my girls, my friends. And how did I do that? I was like the one who made the extra special effort to be a part of their lives. I always was around people that I thought was so cool and so, you know, this and so that. And, you know, they could handle themselves. And, you know, I always thought more of them than I did of myself. And that was my idea of love for years. And I carried those things with me down the road, never looking at me, always looking at you for the things that I could add to me to make me feel better and be better, feel better about me and be better with me, if that makes sense. Because I never felt comfortable in my own skin. Right? Now, we talk about the different facets of love. And that right there, what I just described, meets the criterion for the first definition that I read. But now when we go deeper, right? And you start to get to a place where you get to consciousness. And I talked about consciousness versus mature consciousness the other day in my feed for Monday. And I was like, as I started getting older, I said, and I was just talking to somebody on the phone just a few moments ago. And I said, I can't go on like this. Destruction. Right? Because along with that demonstration of love that my mother gave me, there was tough love. And in that tough love, a lot of inherent things came along with that. Trauma, right? Trauma. Yes, there is trauma, right? Because one cannot exist with the other. Love cannot exist without hate. Up cannot exist without down. Left cannot exist without right. Without left or right, there's just one thing. There is no left or right. There's one pole right there in the middle. And there's just a vast open area. So now we're sitting here and I'm getting older and I'm saying the bow has to break. At some point, this bow is going to break. And you know what that bow is. My spirit cannot hold all this stuff that I've been doing over the years in the name of and for the sake of love. Right? And anybody who tells you, I'm not going to say anybody, but the vast majority of people that I've come across and we've really sat down and chopped it up about love, like they were able to get gut level honest and say it. Like there's nowhere that you can go in this world and not have some degree of love. So what I'm essentially saying is that we need it. And that's bleeding over into the second definition from the Bible that I was just talking about. Like the greatest of these is love. Like, and where does it start? But hold on to that. Hold on to where it starts at, because you could always restart it. You could always do a reboot. Right? But we're going to say that for another day, because I think I'm going to break this up into 3 parts. This is how I had it structured in my mind the other day. But save that part for another day. We just going to stay right here with the exam itself. You know how you go to the doctor? And when you go to the doctor and you get an exam, what does that exam consist of? Okay, glad you asked. It consists of a physical, right? Hey, good morning, Nadira. It consists of right. So it consists of a exam. The doctor puts the stethoscope on. He listens to your heart. He listens to your ear. He looks into your eyes. He looks into your mouth. He does an exam. So this is where we're going to start with this at today. We're going to do a love exam, and it's going to be comprised. The first thing we're going to do is ask some hard questions. Like, first of all, like, does my idea of love align itself with anything in those definitions that I just read? Ask yourself that. And if it doesn't, what do I need to do, right, to align myself with a definition of love? Because we're not saying that those are the finals, because based on your experience, based on your feelings, based on your mindset, based on your cultural beliefs, based on whatever it is you religious wise, because that was a Bible definition, and I just used two solid definitions. I don't want to get into your religious stuff, but if you have a different type of propaganda or a reference source, prime source that you consult, look into that and see what that says about love. Does it align itself with that? Right? And where are you at with it? Right? And do you meet the mark? Do you measure up? Right? Is there more that you need to do? Yeah, I know I'm machine gunning these questions off for you, but this is just this is part of what the exam, this is what happens when you go to a doctor's office to get your annual exam. Right? So I'm here and I'm sitting here and I'm saying to myself and I'm asking all these questions and I'm like, where am I at with love? Right? And I'm going to tell you where I'm at. Right? I'm getting so much better. I'm no longer the person that I used to be. I look in the mirror in the morning because I don't want to get off into self-love, because self-love is something that I want to touch on like tomorrow or the day after, provided I can be able to get my behind on here. But I'll see. But that's a story for another time. So we get here and we're talking about love and the doctor is examining you and we're aligning it with you when you go for your annual physical with the doctor. We take care of our physicals with no problem. I take care of my physical with no problem. I go for my mammogram. I go for this. I go for that colorectal. I go for my physical. I go get my teeth done. I go get my eyes checked because I'll be blind. I take care of that because once that fails, you got problems, big problems. But we're talking about the inside stuff. Let's talk about that inside stuff. Like, how are my organs doing? Like, what the beating that I'm put? Listen, I struggle with my weight. Let's go here. Let's go back here. I struggle with my weight over the years. And over the years, up and down like a yo-yo, up and down with my weight. Why? Because food has become a refuge for me. In times when I feel desolate, in times when I'm feeling derelict, and when I am alone, food is a comfort for me. Right. From a very young age. And so when I'm like that, right, that's not love. I talked about my relationships with girlfriends who I looked up to fill the void in me that I didn't feel like I had for myself. Like, let me tell you something. I didn't like myself. Right? And looking back, I'm going to go a step deeper. Are you ready? Do you have socks on? Right? I didn't like you. Right? No, I admired you to fill the void that I needed to fill in me, but I didn't like you. If you were a girlfriend of mine, and even today, if I put you ahead of me, if I think more of you than I think of myself, if I put you in an idol type place on a pedestal in my life, I don't like you. I don't love you. Why? Because I'm robbing you of the opportunity of seeing the most beautiful gem there is that this world has had, and that this world has, and that's me. Love is about interacting, exchanging ideas, touching each other's spirit, feeling each other in a way that when you leave this person, or if something were to happen where you were disconnected, like your life would never be the same. That doesn't happen when I'm bowing down, when I'm doing this, when I'm kissing up, when I'm sucking up, when I'm saying yes when I want to say no. Make sense? In your relationships, are you a blessing or a curse? With my son, I always reference my son. You know why? Because he was the light. My son was the light that amplified a lot of dark, nasty shit that was going on in my life when he was born. I had to straighten up a lot of behaviors if I didn't want to pass down a rusty legacy to him, the rusty legacy that was handed down to me. And that legacy was handed down to me not out of arrogance because people wanted to just torture every soul that it came in touch with. My grandmother and my great-grandmother didn't want to hand down a legacy of bullshit. They didn't do that on purpose. It was what was handed to them. They didn't know any better, so they didn't do any better. But now that I know better, and the Bible talks about like each generation being set up better than the next, like now that I know better, I have a responsibility of stewardship. I have to hand down something better so that my next generation could do better. Same with my relationships. It's not about just handing something down to my kids so the Glover name could carry on. I'm talking about my relationships. I have a responsibility to shine in my relationships. That's love. You have the opportunity to be blessed with me. Why? Because I've been blessed. Favor is mine. So, yeah. And the same with me. I'm not just blessing you. You need to bless me. How are you blessing me with your presence? What are you doing in our relationship today to make it better? If it's not working for you, if I'm not working for you because I'm evolving into a whole totally different place. So some of the people that I'm interacting with, I may not do it for anymore. We could even ramp this thing up and go in the direction that this thing is flowing. And it's not my direction. It's the direction. It's the way that nature planned it. It's the way that it's intended to be. It's the purpose. The ultimate purpose. Not putting a deity over top of it. It's the ultimate purpose. Like, can we make the necessary changes and compromises so that we could be able to benefit each other and walk and continue on this walk? And it's cool if you can't do it. These are my relationships. And even with my son, this is cool if you can't do it. Nobody should be walking around uncomfortable, miserable, and disappointed about the state of affairs our relationship is in. Talking about love. Because when you love me, right? When you like me, that's one thing. When you respect me, that's a whole nother talk for a whole nother fee. But when you love me, right? When you loving up on me, you may not agree with everything that I'm doing or everything that I'm saying, but guess what? I love her all the same and I got her back and you better not do shit. That's the highest level, unconditional love. That's the lofty place that I'm trying to get to love people no matter where they at. My son, guess what? Listen. I'm getting there. Know how I know? Because I had other plans for my son's life. I'm a control freak. Yeah, I may not seem like it, but I'm a control freak. And I had other goals for my son's life. I was filling out college applications. He was going to be somebody's lawyer or something, doctor, something. But he made a choice for himself. And when I realized that this is the way that this is going to be, guess what I did? I had to get behind him. That's the closest I've gotten to unconditional love. I got his back. And I've had some people say to my face, I wouldn't have let him do this. I don't got no control. I don't got no control. And behind his back, I had his back. Behind his back, I have his back. That's what I want to do in my other relationships. Love. So when I ask those questions, ask yourself them questions. This is the first part of the love exam. Tomorrow, whenever the next time I get on, we're going to talk about the diagnostics, because after the doctor does his exam, keeping it aligned with the doctor's office, he do blood work. He send you to the lab. I know my doctor does. He sends me to the lab. And then we have this conversation when we come back, when the blood work comes back. And what I do, I ask for everything, right? I ask for everything. Why? Because it's important. I take care of my temple, right? But we're going to go deeper the next time, because when we're going to talk about diagnostics, when we get that blood work back, right? How are your organs doing, right? How's your brain doing, right? How are there any cancers lurking around? What is your weight like? Inside. So we just did some surface stuff today. So does somebody want to come on and talk about the love exam this morning? I'll wait. Because I want to save the next one, which is love diagnostics, love assessment, something like that. I'm sweating because I just came from the gym. So does anybody want to go on and talk about love diagnostics? What time is it? I'm trying to see, do I have time? Do I have time? Right, Andrew. Andrew. Love for food. That's right. Never having to say I'm sorry. That's right. Right. So, do I have time? Oh my God. Listen, I gotta go, guys. So, I gotta go because my phone look like it's dying. How did I do that? But listen, tomorrow, Love Diagnostics, I'll invite people on. Andrew, if you're there, because I am at 5%, and that's not cool. And I want to post this so I could go back and remind myself that tomorrow is Love Diagnostics or Love Assessment. I don't know which one sounds good to you. But nonetheless, I'm here.